So I was perusing Twitter yesterday and I came across this. The supabase team has gone ahead and made it so that you can interface with a local Postgres database directly in your browser. The way they did this is by using PGlite. I'd never heard of this before, but it's a really cool open source project where you can basically run a full Postgres database using Wasm directly in your browser, which is a really cool idea. And they used it to build out this pretty sweet little application where you can basically go through and prototype out a database in your browser. So I figured this was worth a video to kind of go through and show you what this can do and kind of show you a real life use case. I'm gonna go in here. I went ahead and generated this little fake email list here. I just used Claude to go through and make me some emails. So I'm gonna go over here. We're going to import this fake email list.csv. And I think what it's going to do, it's going to go through, read in the CSV, and create tables based off of it. I think what we can do now that we have the database imported and set up, they made the interface for this a chat LLM type interface thing, which I think this is one of the best kind of use cases for these LLMs I've seen. I've made a couple videos in the past on why I'm not a huge fan of just raw putting a chat interface on everything. I kind of fell for that siren song a couple months ago. I went through and built out a full project with it. It was a weights tracker thing. And I very quickly kind of realized that in the real world, a lot of normal functions are just better in a traditional UI. Eventually, if we can get to the point where these LLMs can have full context over everything, you can interface with them using voice, these could be super compelling. But for right now, they don't feel super good for day-to-day things. But as far as like exploring a database and doing different things with it, this actually makes a lot of sense. So I'm gonna go in here and say, graph out my email list table, make the x-axis the, let's do the age and the y-axis the count, make it a bar graph. Let's see if we can pull this off. So I'm gonna go in here, it's gonna read out the SQL, it's gonna go through and show these off. So you can see it actually is able to go through and do a bit of basic data science on this. So I could very easily see this being good for researching out your data. But the thing that I really wanted to explore this for is actually kind of prototyping out different features in your applications and also creating the migrations for those. Because over here you can see you can just export this as a migration, or in my case, since for all my applications I end up using Drizzle for my ORM, if I just do export this schema as a Drizzle schema, just print out the code here. Let's see if it can do that. Yeah, that's awesome. And then I think, I'm not sure which LLM this is actually using under the hood. I have found that Claude is like the only one who can correctly do Drizzle stuff. Anytime I ask like GPT or any of the other models to do it, they use either some weird, super out-of-date version of like an early beta Drizzle, or they'll just use some random Python package. So this actually did it correctly. So if I wanted to import this into my application, I could. So what I want to do to actually show this off is I'm going to go through and kind of prototype out a little feature here. Something we're working on right now is a new like email list feed thing, because the core value prop of what my company does is we pull insights out of our data set and deliver them to our end users. So something we're building right now is this kind of feed delivery system where we'll go through each day, find all the core cluster buys, find all the buys following a stock price decline, etc., and go through and put those in your email. But we also need to allow the users to kind of set their settings and do a bunch of stuff, because we don't want to just spam people with no recourse. So what I want to go ahead and do is I'm going to grab this text here. So these are the 4 categories we have right now. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say, I need to create a new table for my DB. It needs to store an enum of what the feed type is. Here are the feed types. And it also needs a foreign key to the email list table, and it also needs a count variable to track. It also needs a count variable. So let's just go ahead and do this, see if it can pull this off. So it's going to go ahead in here and it's going to create this new table system. Perfect. So it'll go through in here and it'll generate the schema for this. So it created a new feed table here, created this feed type, which is, let me go ahead and here. Can we see? Yeah, okay, so we look at the actual Postgres it generated. So it created a feed type, which has the 4 things that I wanted. It's creating a feed data table, which is has the email list ID, which is a foreign key. It has the feed type, and it has the count. And then it also has all this stuff in here. So this is a super, super basic example. Obviously, if you're building a real application, it'd be more complicated. But just for the sake of argument, let's go ahead and make this a bit more complicated. I want to now add in another table which will track if a feed type is for pro users or not. Could you generate this? Let's see if it can kind of figure this out, because I've already implemented this and I have my own way of doing this. So yeah, okay, cool. So it's referencing here. So okay, awesome. That did work. So it created this new table called feed pro status. I have this feed type right here, which is going to also reference this. Yep, it's referencing the same enum. So I can go in here in like an admin console and I can create my 4 feed types, mark whether or not they're for pro users or not. Then for all of my email list entries, I can go through here and just set all of these up, and it just works. I'm gonna go ahead and now finally test, can you export this for me into a Drizzle schema? Just print out to the console. This looks exactly like what I ended up writing. This is very similar to the actual schema we wrote out here. They separated out the feed type enum into a different file, which makes sense. And now all I need to do is go back into my code base, copy paste this in, run the migrations, and I've got these new tables set up and ready. I think that they're also working on a feature to deploy this to an S3 bucket, because since it's using PGlite, I have to imagine that it's kind of just like a file very similar to SQLite, so where we might be able to export these databases into S3 or eventually deploy these. I already put my email in on the waitlist, because it'd be really cool if you could prototype off of this, if you could go through and you were starting some new project, work with it. They have a couple demos of this where, like, I think I can actually try this. Let's create a new database. Let's just say I want to create a basic Twitter clone. Could you give me the data model for that? All right, let's see what it comes up with here. Okay, awesome. That all looks pretty good. So like a users, a tweets, a followers, and then let's go ahead and looks good. Push that to the DB. And now, yeah, perfect. We can just go in here and we have our little Twitter clone data model set up. I could go in here and let's say, all right, on my followers, I want to also add a timestamp for when they followed. So add in a followed at timestamp on the followers table. We'll do that. I'll go through in here. Yep, it adds in the followed at timestamp. It's a timestamp Z. Perfect. The executed SQL will give me this here. I have my migrations, which has everything I need. And yeah, this is a really, really cool system. I would love to see this get to a point where I could be screwing around with my database using this interface and then connect to it locally. One of the most annoying things I've found working with Postgres is that the local experience is not great if you're not using Docker or supabase or something like that. I don't know why, but at least for me, whenever I'm using Postgres on my Mac, it's a huge pain in the ass to get it working. So being able to rapidly prototype with this and then eventually just deploy this up to a Postgres Lite file system. Again, I need to explore this PGlite project more, because this is a really, really cool idea of basically doing SQLite with Postgres. Because I found I like SQLite. It works really well for a lot of things, but I've really, really enjoyed actually using Postgres lately. So I'd love to keep using that. And I also really, really like the sort of diagram system they've got here. And yeah, I mean, I know this was kind of very random and I don't have too much more to say on this. I just wanted to show this off because this is a really cool way of doing like local testing of a Postgres database and just kind of playing around with this. The Supabase team is doing a great job of making Postgres super, super usable. It's been by far and away the most useful Postgres instance I've ever used. So yeah, that's all I really have to say here. Go check this out. I'll have it linked down below. It's just postgres.new. They have all the good domains. And yeah, go try out making some Postgres databases.